Hail with a low of 74. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Maureen Dowd, writing in the New York Times. Maureen Dowd, loathes Trump. Dutifully repeats all of the DNC-approved monikers for Trump. But she writes about D.C. My sister is having a bad summer. In fact, even as I'm typing this, Peggy is at D.C. police headquarters. We had dinner in Georgetown recently. When we came back to my house where her car was parked, she was short a Buick. Two polite police officers who responded to our call said they could do little amid a rash of brazen car thefts by teenagers. One officer said that even if they saw the perp driving in her car, they could not chase him because of the laws passed by the D.C. Council. Yeah, there you go. She ultimately got her car back. It was found. Officer from Prince George's County in Maryland banged on her door. Car was found at a park running nearly out of gas. When she collected it after paying a $215 towing charge, she found an odoriferous collection: half-eaten pizza, grape soda cans, fast food wrappers, used condom, and a couple of debit cards. Just another Saturday night. Dowd goes on to talk about D.C. Oh, well, actually, one more point here. The icing on the cake, she got more than $1,800 worth of speed camera tickets the car thieves had racked up doing 70 and 25-mile-an-hour zones, and some for running red lights. One ticket revealed that the car was stolen just after she got out of it at 7 p.m., so she, she'll get those, I assume she'll get those tickets suspended, but that's not the point, is it? This is sort of the quality of life stuff that we've been talking about for a long time, actually, with Chicago. It's not just all about murders and shootings. This sort of experience make you want to live in the big city? Dowd goes on to say, how ridiculous it is to pull FBI agents from their desk and National Guards troops, you raise the specter of martial law. But she writes, quote, "It is also true that many D.C. residents are secretly glad to see more uniforms. No matter what statistics say, they don't feel safe." She herself writes, "I find myself packing pepper spray again. I feel more wary walking around the city. It's disturbing to ask someone to unlock the Claritin at CVS because the police don't lock up the smash and grabbers." She quotes Eli Honig, who we quoted last week, CNN's legal analyst, also a general detractor of Trump, who said, yes, Trump is hypocritical and scattershot on public safety, but he happens to be within the law here, and he happens to be right when it comes to mobilizing the National Guard to aid the effort in D.C. And we've seen so far 75 homeless camps in Washington, D.C. have been cleared since his executive order mobilizing federal resources. And yet we still have people like Peter Baker at the New York Times saying, the non-existent crime crisis, 30-year low homicide rate. Okay. Tell that to the D.C. residents, including many on the left, like Maureen Dowd, who is packing pepper spray more than she used to. Rafael Mangual, senior fellow and head of research for the Manhattan Institute's Policing and Public Safety Initiative. He's also the author of Criminal Injustice: What the Push for Mass Decarceration and Depolicing Gets Wrong and Who It Hurts Most. Rafael, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me back. Always glad to be on with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I mean, one of the things that we've seen, which is a positive byproduct of Trump's executive order, is, when the president puts his focus on a city and it becomes a proxy for a larger discussion about public safety in big city America, then a lot of people come out of the woodwork to tell their stories, even people that may be reluctant to tell their stories to sort of put Trump in a good light. But nonetheless have, enough quality of life annoyances, if not real public safety fears, that they feel compelled to say, well, I kind of like a little bit more police presence here right now because things are kind of, a little bit out of control.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I also think the other thing going on here is that politically astute people like veterans and like Maureen Dowd, they understand exactly what's going on here. I mean, she warns in her piece, right, that the Democrats really are risking falling into the trap of winding up on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue. And she's exactly right. I mean, what we've seen over the weekend and over the last, several days really as Trump has activated, troops in various federal police agencies, to patrol the streets of D.C., is that Democrats are lining up to chastise the officers, to scream at them, to, denounce the effort as, fascism incarnate. This is the sort of thing that they've been doing. And I think part of what we're seeing here on the part of people like Maureen Dowd is that they are trying to sort of get back some aspect of a decent reputation, because once again, Democrats are sort of finding themselves in the trap of, Donald Trump cures cancer, and they move to ban the cancer cure because it came from Donald Trump.
Well, the other thing is the Peter Baker argument that, is ubiquitous. 30-year low, there's no crime problem. The mayors out there, Bowser and D.C., our own Brandon Johnson here and everywhere in between. We know what to do and it's working. Look at these statistics. Well, guess what? People in Chicago today aren't necessarily thinking about what life in Chicago was like in 2014 or even, pre-pandemic. But what they're seeing and they're experiencing is too many of them either have or know someone who's had an experience like Maureen Dowd or so many other people that have shared their stories. And so for all of your improvement talk, it sounds similar. The analogy I've used, a sports one, is like, the White Sox were 80 games under 500 last year. They were the worst baseball team in baseball history, MLB history. This year, they're only 36 games under 500 at this point. Right. They're still a terrible baseball team. And exactly right. so that's the way people look at it. They don't look at, well, I've seen you go down 7% in shootings this month, and so I feel a lot better about the city.
That's exactly the right point to make. I mean, first off, one of the questions I always love to ask these people who compare the crime levels now to the 1990s in order to make that very point, right? Like, things are nowhere near as bad as they were back then. It's like, well, why is that our standard of comparison?
Yeah.
Why is that the measure? Why are we measuring ourselves now against the worst that things have ever been, right? Why is that the standard? So throw that out, right off the bat. But the other thing that these people just simply refuse to recognize, and it's the part of this debate that infuriates me the most, is that as good as things are in the aggregate, there are still in every major city in America pockets of those cities with crime levels that these people could never imagine, that they would never tolerate for their own communities, right? There are neighborhoods on the south and west sides of Chicago, places like Austin and Woodlawn, and Garfield Park, that these people would never, they would only drive through at 55 miles an hour or more, right? And yet we're supposed to just accept the aggregate crime level as a success despite what's going on in those areas. And this is the thing that they just really, really don't get, that, in my opinion, drastically undercuts their ability to sort of play the woke card and claim, that they are speaking for the less fortunate, because it really is, always has been, the less fortunate that are bearing the brunt of this problem. And in those communities, crime is still way far and above what any of these upper middle class, writers would ever tolerate for themselves or their families.
Well, right. And the other thing is, you obsess about the statistics that are going in your direction. So you want to make it about murders and shootings at present. By the way, they're going down everywhere, including in the suburbs. That's the reason that, nationally, the numbers are low. So it's happening everywhere. There's nothing special that's being done in Chicago. It's happening in spite of what's being done in Chicago, actually. But the other piece of it is, I'm sorry, my quality of life expectation, if I live in the city of Chicago, is not that I didn't get murdered or shot today.
Exactly.
It's that, my car didn't get stolen today. My business didn't get broken in today. I didn't get accosted on the street by a deranged homeless person. I mean, and those things we don't want to talk about.
That's exactly right. I mean, they don't want to talk about them because those things have not gotten much better, right? And that's obvious to everyone who walks the streets of these major cities, whether it's New York or Chicago or LA or Washington, D.C. And these are the things that really drive public sentiment and fear of crime. And it always has been that way. This was the brilliance of the broken windows theory. The broken windows theory recognized that Americans will process visible disorder as a signal that the rule of law has broken down in the public spaces in which disorder flourishes. And that signal, when it's processed, creates fear. And it's not irrational fear, right? I mean, if you walk into, a subway station and you're hit with the smell of urine, right, that tells you something. It tells you somebody urinated there recently, which also means that somebody felt comfortable pulling their pants down and using the bathroom in a public place, which means that in their minds, no one was going to do anything about it. And if they're right, then no one's going to do anything about anything else, including if someone decides to snatch your purse or assault you or grope you or do any of these other things, right? So this is what really drives the sense of safety on a day-to-day basis. Even in the most dangerous neighborhoods in America, you're not going to get, robbed, shot, or raped or stabbed on a daily basis, right? But you will see graffiti and littering and public intoxication and public drug dealing and use, right? That's the sort of thing that you're going to see on a daily basis. And those signals are important, not just because those things are bad for the community, but they also tell us how much control is being exerted in a given space. And if those places are definitionally out of control, which means that the rules are being broken on an hourly basis, then no, you're not safe no matter what the data say. And the public does have an interest in having those things addressed, irrespective of what the broader murder and shooting trends look like. The public does have an interest in going into CVS and being able to buy toothpaste without having somebody come in with a key to open up the fortress that they put the toothpaste behind.
Yeah, and since you mentioned broken windows, that necessarily implicates New York. And of course, what New York City and New York State did was go the opposite direction from broken windows in the recent past, including under a guy who's trying to sideline Mamdani named Andy Cuomo. We've seen the no cash bail reform, quote unquote reform in New York, just like in Illinois. And then also you point to the raise the age law in New York that tried to essentially water down punishment for juveniles who commit crimes.
Yeah, not just tried, but successfully did it. I mean, so 16 and 17-year-olds who used to be chargeable as adults more easily than they are now are almost all going into family court, irrespective of the severity of the charges that they're facing. What that means is that they're way less likely to end up in pretrial detention. And even if they're convicted of a felony, they're way less likely to be put away for any significant period of time. And what that's done is it's emboldened the people who fall into those age categories to misbehave in ways that I think they wouldn't otherwise misbehave if the consequences they faced were more pronounced. But it also creates this incentive for the older gang members to start passing more and more serious criminal conduct responsibilities onto their younger members. Why? Because those younger members do not face the same consequences that the older members face. And, there's a story out of Chicago that always brings this dynamic to mind, and that was the shooting of Adam Toledo. Right? When Adam Toledo, the 13-year-old who was shot by a Chicago cop once in the chest after turning around with a gun in his hand, he was in that alley with another person. It was a 20-something-year-old Latin King member. I have no doubt that it was that Latin King member that put the 13-year-old boy up to the shooting that had occurred that the police were responding to. I have no doubt that it was a Latin King member that put the gun in his hand that got him killed, right? But why does that happen? It happens because that 25-year-old gang member knows if I give the gun to the 13-year-old, he'll get a slap on the wrist, whereas I might actually go to jail and prison.
Rafael, well, just quickly, what is your take, since you study this with, more intensity than most? and have offered so much scholarship on it. The decline in violent crime nationally, is this just regression to the mean pre-COVID, or what forces do you attribute the decline to?
I think it's a combination. I think some of it is regression to the mean. I think a lot of it is a reassertion of policing. If you look at, pick your city, you're going to see arrests are going up. You're going to see convictions are going up. You're going to see jail populations rising, prison populations rising, right? The national prison population increased in 2022 and 3. And I suspect that when the Bureau of Justice Statistics puts out the 2024 statistics, we'll see another increase. Jail populations across the country are up significantly. In cities like New York and LA, traffic stops are up, pedestrian stops are up. But what this means is that we're seeing more enforcement. More enforcement does have the effect of reducing crime. So none of that should really come as a massive surprise. I mean, one of the things that really characterized the sort of pandemic crime rise was a significant pullback on enforcement. We saw fewer arrests being made, fewer stops being made, fewer convictions, fewer people going to jail, more people being released than were going in, whether it was jail or prison, right? Those trends have reversed, and I suspect that has a lot to do with why crime has gone down. And even the New York Times, in an editorial last week, seemed to recognize that possibility.
Rafael Mangual, Senior Fellow, Head of Research for the Manhattan Institute's Policing and Public Safety Initiative, and author of the book Criminal Injustice, What the Push for Mass Decarceration and Depolicing Gets Wrong and Who It Hurts Most. Rafael, thanks as always. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Be well.
And he joined us in the Turnkey Differential line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
We ran the numbers.